Olá, sejam bem-vindos para mais um Agro América aqui no canal AgroMais. Falamos sobre boas práticas agrícolas que podem ser reproduzidas nos 34 Estados-membros em prol da segurança alimentar e o bem-estar rural. Eu sou Gabriel Estrela e hoje eu tenho a honra de entrevistar José Abelardo Mai, que é o ministro da Agricultura, Segurança Alimentar e Empreendimentos de Belize. Minister, thank you so much for your time here, for your availability.
Thank you too for this opportunity.
Well, it's a great opportunity to get to know more about Belize. It's a state that has, like many other countries in Central America, many smallholder farmers, right, with, a very important impact also on the state's economy. Could you tell us a little bit more of how is the agriculture today and what are the main challenges for agricultural production in Belize?
Yeah, Belize is a small country in Central America. We're part of the CARICOM, but we're on mainland Central America. We have about 400,000, population of 400,000 people. The agriculture sector can be categorized in three main areas. The first one being the well-established traditional export crops, which is sugarcane, bananas, citrus. That's the traditional category, I should say, which has been the main foreign exchange earners for the past 30 years, probably. Then you have the second category, which is the grain sector. The grain sector is a well-established sector. It is well integrated, vertically integrated. They do a lot of corn. It includes red kidney bean, it includes soybean. It provides all the grain the country requires for consumption, and we also export. And then we have the third category, which is the small farmers, vegetable, fruits and vegetable producers. These produce the winter crops, or what we call seasonal crops, which is probably, it could be tomatoes, lettuce, papa, onions, for carrots for local consumption. These are small farmers' holdings. So these are three main areas. Probably we could add a fourth, which would be the subsistence farmers, those that produce only for their table. Yep. So these are the main areas in which our agriculture sector is categorized in Belize. In recent years, we have suffered tremendously as a result of climate change. Belize ranks, I think, the third in the region as vulnerable to climate change. We have been hit by hurricanes. We've been hit by droughts. We've been hit by rainfall when there should be no rainfall in that time of harvesting, for example. And so the inconsistent weather patterns have affected us. In addition to that, we have had infestations of pests and diseases, again, as a result of climate change. We have had, for the first time last year, Asian bean trip, which we had never seen in Belize.
Asian
bean trips, yeah. We are a strong producer of red kidney beans, soybean, black eyed peas. And we found this pest 2 years ago, I think. And we have no idea how it got into the country. We believe it was brought in by the currents, the air currents into the country. That was, the first year was devastating for us. And we learn how to deal with it now. Farmers learn how to deal with it. But it also gave us an indication that our chemical and traditional ways of managing pests and diseases have to change. We cannot continue using agrochemicals that develop resistance to these insect pests. We are now looking at the bio inputs. It's very important.
How long did that take between the time that the first year where these bean farms were affected to taking this decision of changing how to deal with
our plan to change had already been in place. But this just accelerated our movement in that direction because there was actually no chemical insecticide to control that pest. So we had to seek other ways. Of course, integrated pest management, but looking at more natural-based formulations. There were some out there which we had not had the opportunity to have in the country. So we started to accessing them and ensuring that we're registered in the country for use natural-based products. And then we looked at now, we're looking at beneficial organisms, biological control, and so on. But it did affect us. We also had an increase in sigatoka in bananas, which led us to have significant losses in the banana industry. When you have sigatoka, you have to prune, you have to remove the infected leaves, and leaving the plant with 3 or 4 functional leaves means that that banana that you harvest will not be able to make it to Europe because of the ripening period is shortened, and so that banana would not be able to make it to the European market. And so we lost. We had a lot of bananas that could not be marketed in Europe because as a result of that. The war in Ukraine and Russia just added to our grief in a sense that the cost of fertilizers increased by 300%. So we have climate change being affecting us directly, indirectly because of the increase in pests and diseases. And then we had now the war in Ukraine, which contributed to the high cost of fuel, high cost of agro inputs. And so we were in a very difficult position as a country. Nevertheless, riding out of the COVID storm, Belize did well economically, and you can look at the records in the region. The government of Belize came into power in the peak of the COVID season. In November 11th, 2020, there was a change of government of Belize, and we were elected the government, a new government. The international organizations had said to us that based on our economy, we would only be able to grow 1.5%, because the economy in Belize consists of tourism and agriculture, but more so it was tourism at the time. And so COVID then affected us in such a way that there was then zero tourism. So there was no tourism in the country. The only thing that kept the country alive at that time was the agriculture sector. And so we learned from that experience. So we came into government during that same time. Our government at the time was borrowing $1 million a day only to pay salaries, because there was no foreign exchange earnings, there was no money making. The country was locked down. And we came in borrowing $1 million a day. And in about 6 to 7 months' time, we turned it around. The IMF had indicated to us that we would have to take serious action, for example, laying off thousands of public servants, increasing taxes. Our Prime Minister and the economic team did not accept the recommendations from the IMF, and the cabinet, along with the executive, developed our own homegrown remedy. And so we did well. As a matter of fact, the economy did not grow by only 1.5%. It grew by 12.5%.
And what were those solutions, and how was the agriculture sector involved? Because in 2021, the agriculture sector already represented more than 10% of the national GDP. Yeah. It's quite a bit large.
Of course, what we did, my ministry is responsible for agriculture, food security, and enterprise. To a certain extent, we manage the importation of foods. We began a campaign of consuming what you produce and produce what you consume in the country. we regulated to a certain extent the inflow of agriculture foods, imported foods. At the same time, we promoted the consumption and the production. We intensified the production of what we consume in the country. And so the economy grew by not the 1.5% or 1.75, which the experts had predicted. We grew the economy by 12.5%. Agriculture in that particular year grew by 24%, something never seen in the history of the country. But we also worked on exporting as much as we can. We opened the market for export of cattle to Mexico and to Guatemala, which contributed a lot to the growth in the economy. Mm-hmm. And so 1 year after COVID, here we are with a 12.5% growth of the economy and a 24% growth in agriculture. Up to today, we are still producing seedlings to distribute to rural communities so that we can have our own home, our own food. People grow their own vegetables at home. The more vegetables that we produce, the less we have to import.
So this is a food security public policy, right? We're talking about grow your own food, and most of the residents, you would say, what percentage of the population abided by this type of public policy?
Well, I won't have the percentage. What I do know is that much of the people living in the rural areas started to produce their own food. Mm-hmm. And the Ministry of Agriculture participated by providing them seedlings. Each district now had a greenhouse which was producing seedlings to distribute to these people in rural communities. The schools were growing their own food. The cooperatives, women were growing their own food. Mm-hmm. And that is what helped us. As a matter of fact, we managed the importation of foods. The more you import, the weaker your economy becomes, because you can grow that food. And so we started to encourage people to grow their own food. For example, in carrots, in the past, we could only grow carrots for maybe 2 months of the year. Today, we are producing carrots 10 months of the year. Mm-hmm. In potatoes, again, we only used to produce potatoes for 3-4 months of the year. Right now, we're again 8 months of the year. And so onions is similar. Onions were like maybe 9 months of the year where we're producing onions. And all this has led to keeping your dollars at home and creating a revolving economy within that employs people, that provides them with safe food, and provides them with affordable food. And that has helped the economy tremendously.
Talking about that in terms of a period that came after COVID-19 and a period also that came in line with also many natural disasters that are taking place. Tell me about this climate resilient agriculture project that has also outside funding. How much, what is funded, where does it come from, and what are the objectives?
Yeah, it's a climate, the name of the project is Climate Resilient and Sustainable Agriculture Development Project, CRESAP. It consists of, it is a World Bank project. It consists of grant money for the farmers and a portion contributed by the producers. As the name implies, it is climate resilient. So any project which seems or appears or is climate resilient is going to be funded by this project. For example, we grew the cattle industry significantly. We exported, I think, close to $60 million in 1 year to Mexico and Guatemala. But as we expand the market for beef cattle, farmers start to get more involved in cattle farming. So they are now starting to expand their cattle herds. New farmers are coming in. And as they do so, the tendency for them is to clear land. Clearing all the land, all the forest, is not something that's sustainable in the long run. That has created climate change. And so we are very much concerned about the way we go about doing cattle farming and other farming. We cannot continue clearing the land. The notion that to be a farmer you need to be a large landowner has to be dispelled. And so this CRESAP, a component will be to convince farmers, show farmers that we must develop in a sustainable manner. We can do now using the technology that Brazil has, using the technology that Colombia has, and that Costa Rica has. Using that model, we can do silvipastoral systems. We can do agroforestry and sustainable agricultural development practices. We can leave the trees. We can underbrush. We can plant trees if there are no trees around the cane fields that are being converted to pasture. Let us plant trees. It can be fruit trees, it can be timber trees. My son and I are also farmers. Mm-hmm. My son is to be now a master's degree. He's going to be a master's degree student at Cartier. So just before we came here, he planted the day before 530 trees around the pastures, the farms, because we realized that we cannot continue clearing the forest. And as the Minister of Agriculture and Food Security Enterprise, I have to lead by example. And so my son and I, having a cattle farm, are planting trees all around the perimeter of our farms and within the pastures. And other farmers are starting to do it too. So we are convinced that using the CRESAP resources, that farmers will adapt this technology. And as a matter of fact, my son is here today because he is going around tomorrow and the day after looking at the farms that are in Costa Rica. He will visit Cartier and look at how they're doing it so that we can better have an understanding of how it can be done and promote that technology in Belize.
So we're talking about your objectives for cooperation also between other countries and also other institutions that do this type of research.
Absolutely. Cartier is very strong in this particular area and expertise. ICA will also help us, guide us to make that enlace between Brazil and Belize, Colombia, Belize, Costa Rica, so that our farmers can understand how this operates. In Costa Rica, I understand that farmers are receiving financial benefit for using a certain technology. You're protecting the environment, you're reducing carbon, at the same time producing oxygen. And that is what the farmers have to understand in countries like Belize that have, in the past, cleared every single tree to plant sugarcane, or clear every single tree to do pastures. And so we are very excited that this next step in Belize will be one that is sustainable, one that is environmentally friendly, and one that will ensure that our future generations will have forests and will benefit from the rainfall and all that a safe environment brings.
So what are the next challenges for the country? We're talking about rural extension programs, talking about also implementing different types of technology along with CATI in different institutions. There's that moment where the institutions have to talk to the producers. Is this already happening?
Of course, we are.
What are the next challenges for you?
Capacity building is very important. How do we get the farmers to understand this? It means that we have to train our extension officers. We have to update them. They have to upgrade now. They have to look at new technology and being able to effectively communicate that to the farmer, showing him by empirical ways that this is the way to go now. And so we are spending resources also in training our extension officers, training and strengthening the cooperatives, training and strengthening the cooperative officers so they can go out and be effective in conveying the message to the farmer. But most importantly, I believe that the best person to train a farmer is a farmer. So having these farmer outreach programs, the campo a campo, campesino a campesino, is very important. And so we train the trainers, we train key farmers so that they themselves will do the effective dissemination of the information and technology to farmers. We are looking at technology. Now you have available drone technology. You have softwares that take images of your pastures and can tell you exactly what deficiencies there is, how much protein content it has, and then you apply that, what you're short of, what you're deficient in, to your animals in form of mineral salts. Mm-hmm. And this is a new technology where we will be efficient producers. No longer can we continue to believe that you have to have large parcels of land to have large amounts of cattle. Before, when I was at College of Agriculture, I was taught that you need 2 acres of pasture for one animal. Today that has changed. That is what made people think, oh, well, for me to raise 100 head of cattle, I need 200 acres of land. That is no longer the thought.
You can increase productivity without expanding the land,
Exactly.
right?
So how do we do it is very important. And so when you speak to the sugarcane farmers, for example, I say, listen, there's no reason why if you have 30 acres, you cannot do 50, 60 animals on that pasture. You can. And they say, how is that possible? Oh, there's a technology that's called silvipastoral systems using this technology, and everybody shocked and say, oh, well, we need to do it. So that is what we need to do in the very, very near future.
Fantastic. What are the other sectors that you can talk about? I know that coconut production also is very important.
Yes, the Ministry of Agriculture is focusing on 3 or 4 commodities. Mm-hmm. It's best you select 3 or 4 than to select 10 and not be able to do any of them well. Coconut is one of them. We visited Brazil, Fortaleza, to look at the coconut industry there, to look at seed material, germplasm, a hybrid versus a variety. We looked at pitahaya, which is dragon fruit, excellent market. Yes, it's a niche market in the US. And we also looked at soursop, wanabana. Those 3 products we have been working on. We have already received right now the clearance for us to export coconuts to Mexico. We're also working now on getting the pest risk assessment to export right now pitahaya to the US. We are a medfly free status country, and so we have access to that. We are multiplying seed right now. And we are also working with the soybean project. Belize is now, and I should proudly announce that Belize now is self-sufficient in soybean production. We have increased from 0 production in the country to right now having large areas under production. We have close to 50,000 acres of soybean under production. We are now producing our own soybean. We don't have to import soybean. Much of Central American countries and the CARICOM region are still importing soybean. Mm-hmm. We have moved away from that now, in that we can now export soybean. But we want to export the soybean meal, not the soybean. It's always best to add value.
Process.
And then export. And so we are now, at this time, we are almost completing the installation of a modern soybean plant in the northern part of Belize using the chemical extraction process, which means that it will, it's solvent extraction, I think it is, where you extract as much oil as possible. And we are also about to complete the installation of the oil refinery. So instead of exporting the crude oil from soybean, we are now going to be able to refine that oil and put it on our shelves. And that means that we'll have local soybean oil for market in Belize. So we don't have to import the bad oil that you bring in from other countries. We'll have our own soybean refinery. And we have, at this time, I think, about 20,000 acres of coconuts planted. We have, I think, close to 300 acres. Sorry. We have close to 1,000 acres of soursop planted, which soursop is a very delicious fruit. It has medicinal values, just like Peter Haya. And so we are hoping that we will be able to process pulp and export this fruit to the US and other destinations. So it is going well for us. We have come a long way. Growing the agriculture sector by 24% in 1 year is a hell of an accomplishment. And we are still optimistic that we can do more. But it will take a lot of effort from the government, from the private sector, and from the small farmers.
Fantastic. Minister, thank you so much for this interview. It's a pleasure.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
All right. O Agro América fica por aqui. Eu te agradeço pela sua audiência e, por favor, acompanhe este programa e outros no nosso canal no YouTube e nossas redes sociais no @AgroMaisTV. Eu te vejo na próxima. Até mais. Tchau.